Hi everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thanks so much for joining me on my channel today. Today is day 22 of Christy's Beautiful Life, 30 Days of Sketches, and Scraptember. The sketch for today is by Laura Alberts, and the Scraptember prompt is monochrome. Now, the monochrome prompt was challenging me. I really wanted to make a monochrome layout, and I pulled a lot of inspiration from Pinterest, but in the end I couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to do, and it was getting me a little stressed, so I decided to just have my background monochrome, and that would be my nod to the Scraptember prompt. Usually I love using prompts and challenges to try something new, but this time I just stuck with what I knew. And this layout was a little bit of a disaster when I started, but it ended up okay. So this is the process. It's a little bit of a bumpy road, but I'll explain as I go along. So I started off with a piece of gessoed thick white cardstock, and I'm adding some magicals. I'm adding yodeling yellow, grab a guy gold, glittering gold, and California poppy gold. I add all of those colors at one point or another. And before I started with the magicals, I traced around my photos. I reached the pencil in a little bit just to make sure that the pencil would not be visible later on when I was done with the background. And a lot of times magicals will have another color mixed in. I don't know if you saw that, but there was some blue mixed into one of the colors. So I really wanted to keep the background just yellow and shades of yellow, so I sopped that up and I added a little bit more yellow to the background. Magicals are fairly new to me. I just recently started playing around with them, and I'm finding that I'm using a lot of water, and I'm generally using a paintbrush with them as well. They are a powder form of color, and then the paintbrush helps to break the color up so that there isn't powder on the background. Here I'm using my heat tool to not just dry the color, but to spread around some of the color. And then I use my paintbrush to help me out a little bit too. And then I mix in a little bit of the packaging technique. I'm just trying to spread out those larger pools of color. I sprinkle some water on the background, and then I use a paper towel to remove the water. That lifts up some of the color and makes a really cool effect. This technique is a little more noticeable when you use a darker color. And I just switched out the background. This is a new one. I accidentally ruined the first one, so I created this one instead using the exact same technique. And at first I was a little upset, but it wasn't so bad because I like this background a little bit better. I add a little bit more color to the bottom of this background. I thought the bottom looked a little bit washed out, and earlier I added a few splatters. I just put a little bit of magical powder on my table, and then I added some water and I sprinkled some splatters around. Then I dried the background really well so that I could start stamping on it. I'm using some Staz On ink in Jet Black. I'm using some stamps from my stash. I'm using, I believe, Studio Calico stamps right now. I used a mesh stamp, and I also use a stamp that has some small circles on it. And I remember watching videos a long time ago before I stamped on my layouts, and I was always wondering, how do they know where to put the stamping? And I really just limit my stamping for the most part to wherever I put the color down. And I'm just filling up the area. I am not worrying too much about it. I'm not thinking too much about the background stamping. Now for these bat images, and these are from a REcollections stamp set, I'm being a little more careful about where I put those. I want to space them because they're not going to just fade into the background as much as the background stamps are. And there was a very small star in one of the REcollections Halloween stamp sets, so I thought that this would be a good addition, and I'm just stamping that all around the page. I would have loved it even more if there had been two different size star stamps, but that's okay. I was happy to have this one stamp. Now I'm inking the edges of both of my photos with some black soot, and I'm going to be matting them on some Tim Holtz pattern paper that is called Abandoned. And you could see on the back of the photos that I had already had these attached down to some black paper, and that's because this was not my first try at this layout. I had tried a few other things. This sketch does not look like a complex sketch, but for some reason I just couldn't get it to work right away. And I have to learn that when that happens, I should take a break. I finally did take a break, and then that's when it started coming together. And now my photos are mounted. They're mounted first on some white cardstock and then some of the pattern paper from that Tim Holtz collection. and then I attach the photos to each other, and then I pop them up on some fun foam. Now I'm going to add some modeling paste to the background. I'm using a stencil from Art Anthology and some Liquitex modeling paste. And I'm again mainly putting the modeling paste on the area of color. I just wanted to add a little bit more texture to it. This stencil has diagonal lines and it also has some water droplets, and I'm only using the diagonal lines on this layout. I'm being very careful not to smudge the modeling paste that I already put down. The best way to do that is to dry the modeling paste in between applications. And now I'm putting some black splatters on the background. This is just some watered down black acrylic paint. And I want there to be splatters of different sizes. And I am mainly concentrating the splatters on the area of color. You can see that a few go astray on the bottom, but I'm fine with that. I like the idea of there being some scatter. I also add some splatters in white watered down acrylic paint. And then after drying everything very thoroughly, because this would make a really big mess if I hadn't dried the black and white splatters, I'm adding a few more bat stamps to the background. I picked out 2 different stamps to go along with the one that was already there. There's that slightly larger bat, and then there's this one I'm putting down now where the bat's wings are lifted high up into the air, and I thought that I liked the shape of that image, so I added that to the background in several places. Now I'm ready to attach my photos down to the background, so I'm adding some ATG adhesive to the back of them, and then I'm following along with the sketch, and I'm putting a circular item behind the 2 photos. And I realized I had 2 doilies, and I kind of wish I had left the 2 doilies because the one doily looks very thin and the doily isn't as noticeable with just that thin layer, but I leave that there for a while and I add some photo corners and I punch those out using my EK Success photo corner punch, and I punch those also from the Tim Holtz abandoned paper. I'm using some black soot to ink the edges of the photo corners, and I'm using the ATG adhesive to attach them down. Next, I'm going to start embellishing the layout. So I went through my stash and I started looking for some flowers and some Halloween embellishments that I thought would go with the layout. So I decided I was going to switch out that doily for a purple doily, and I inked the edges of the purple doily and I put that in there, and I realized I had 2 of those in there too, but that particular doily is less transparent, so one of those was just fine. I looked through a Thickers Halloween title pack that I had, and I found this title, Hocus Pocus, and I thought that would be a cute title for this layout. These pictures are from my family's vacation to Salem, Massachusetts, but I didn't really like the gold. Not that I didn't like the gold, but I didn't have any gold on the page, and I didn't want to include any gold, so I decided to put some gesso on them and then paint them with some purple metallic paint. And unfortunately, the first paint that I tried was totally dried out, so I'm using some Prima metallic paint. My plan is to put some flower clusters on the page, so I wanted to make some florals to go along with those, and I wanted to make them Halloween style to go along with the photos. So I'm using a Vicki Boutin leaf stamp and some black sparkly embossing powder from REcollections. And I'm stamping a number of these images, and I'm going to heat emboss all of them. And I thought that the black color, especially the glittery black color, would be a good complement to the layout. Usually when I want to add florals to my layouts, I use die cuts, but I was going through my stamps and I found this Vicki Boutin stamp and I hadn't used it in a while, and I thought that this would be a better choice for this particular layout. I don't leave a border around the outside. I just cut very close to the black outline when I fussy cut them out. At times I found it a little tricky to fussy cut around the bottom of each of these stems, and sometimes the bottom leaves would break off. I probably should have used a thinner piece of paper to put the leaves on. I probably could have used an 80-pound cardstock instead of a 120-pound, but that's okay, because it ends up that the leaves are just different lengths, the branches are just different lengths, and I think that adds something to the layout. So now I'm adding some spiderweb doilies to the layout, and these actually do stay on the layout. I use one full one, and then I decided to add in another one that was cut in half to keep the layout balanced. I'm going to be adding those flower clusters now. I have these Petaloo flowers in my stash, and I had them in green and black, and then I had to look through and find a couple of purple flowers. So I found a few just regular mulberry flowers, and then there's a felt flower at the top that's also purple. So I'm building the clusters, and I wanted there to be some orange in the clusters, and I didn't have the right color orange for Halloween, so I found these Jolee's jack-o'-lantern stickers, and I thought that these would be a good addition to each of the clusters. So I looked for the smaller ones, and I'm just kind of tucking them in with the flowers. And then for the center of the two photos, I thought a larger jack-o'-lantern would be fine, so I included a little bit of a bigger one there. And the flower clusters came together pretty quickly. Usually I spend a much longer amount of time fussing around with them. So I'm already ready to add the branches to each of the clusters. So I'm thinking that I have enough to add 2 or 3 to each of the areas on the layout. And now I'm going to add my title. I want to make sure that before I attach that center cluster down that I leave enough room for the title. I stick the letters of the title down to the layout, and I'm very happy with that metallic purple paint. I think it was just the right color, and it covered the letters really well. The only thing is that there was a little bit of extra paint on the sides of some of the letters, so I just had to kind of scrape that extra paint away, but in general I think it turned out pretty well. And I'm just readjusting some of the letters. I was glad that the letters weren't too sticky, so that was easy to do. I was also thinking that it would be nice to have some spiders on those spider webs, so I took some spiders from this Jolee's sticker pack and put one on each of the spider webs on the layout. And now I'm going to start attaching all of this down. I use some heavy-duty gel medium and an old paintbrush, and I brush some medium on the back of the flowers and the stems and everything else on the layout, including those stickers, just to make sure that they stay put. And I cut out some of the footage, but I do go around the entire layout and attach everything down. And I also use the heavy-duty gel medium to attach down those thickers. The foam thickers are usually pretty sticky, but I've been putting paint on them and moving them around a bit, so there's really not too much stick left on them. There were a few more touches I wanted to add to the layout. I'm adding some green jewels to the center of each of the purple flowers, and I wanted to add some type of sparkle to the background, but I felt that I had enough black, and then I found these dark gray rhinestones that I thought would look nice on the page, so I put one in each of the photo corners. And then I liked them on the photo corners, and I thought that they would look nice on the background too. So I just sprinkle a few of those around the background just to add a little extra shine to the layout. And I like the little touch that those add. And like everything else on the layout, I'm keeping those rhinestones mainly on the area of color that's in the background, but I'm spreading them around the outside of that area of color. And as I'm adding these jewels to the background, I start to think that I wanted to add something else, that there was a little something missing from the background. I'm pretty happy with the way the layout is turning out, but I felt that there was just something missing, and I finally realized that I wanted to add a few more stars along the outside of the big area of yellow color as well. So I carefully stamp a few more stars around the background, and then I add 2 ghosts to the upper right-hand corner. You can't see them that clearly, but I was okay with that. I thought that they were a subtle little addition there. And I had one more of those fussy cut branches, so I was trying to figure out where I could put a couple more leaves, and I decided on the center cluster, and that completes the layout. Thank you so much for watching this video, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the lovely comments. I am going to answer each and every one. I just wanted you to know that they really brighten up my day, and I really appreciate your taking the time to leave them. Please take a look in the description box. You'll see the links to all the other scrapbookers following along with this challenge, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.